This podcast is presented to you by Angie Taylor, founding trustee of Land Bountiful Ministry, a private ministerial association. Land Bountiful Ministry is a private ministerial association with its own rules, terms, and conditions. Participation is conditional on membership of Land Bountiful Ministry. All information provided in this podcast is specifically created for private members of the ministry only. All content is offered for consideration, educational purposes, and private use only, and is not intended in any way to replace appropriate advice from appropriately qualified professionals. Each member is to discern for themselves the suitability of any and all information with regard to their own self and circumstances. Choosing to continue to listen to this podcast means you agree to be a member of Land Bountiful Ministry. Hello and welcome to your Fairy God Mentor. This is the show that inspires, encourages, educates, and supports expectant women seeking to experience unhindered, undisturbed physiologic birth, women ready to heal past emotional wounds surrounding birth, and women on a journey to create balance for herself and her family. I am Angie Taylor, the mother of 9, with 2 degrees in natural health. I am also a birth insider, knowing the ins and outs of the birth industry and all the good, the bad, and the ugly. I have worked with expectant women and their sweethearts since 2003 in a variety of roles, including childbirth educator, birth doula, home birth midwife, breastfeeding support, and life coaching. Sit back and enjoy hearing about all the things you never knew. Welcome to today's episode of Your Fairy God Mentor. I'm Angie Taylor, and today I am here with Amanda Ignot. So I'd like to start out this episode with having you share a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are right now.
Okay, so my name is Amanda Ignot. Like she said, I am a wife and a mom of 4, and I had 13 to 15 years of infertility. And then after seeking fertility help, I was able to conceive on my 4th IUI. But my pregnancy was not an experience that I ever wanted to relive. Not that the pregnancy was bad, but that the care was bad. And coming out of that, here you have a woman who's questioning the ability of her body because, first of all, I couldn't get pregnant on my own. Second of all, I couldn't have my baby the way I wanted to. And so as I'm holding my baby, and I think we all as mothers have an epiphany with our first, where we're like, all of a sudden we realize the responsibility that we are holding in our arms. That responsibility kind of like had my eyes go as big as saucers and my jaw kind of hit the floor like, who gave me this responsibility? Who thought I was capable of this, right? And so in that moment, right, I'm feeling broken and realizing how much responsibility I have for this tiny life that I'm now responsible for. And I realized in that moment that I had a lot to learn if I was going to make those decisions that were going to impact her life. And that gave me the realization that, hey, you need to step up and take ownership of your own health and your own care, because our system is broken. And that is why I had the poor care that I had. And it was kind of in that same moment that was revealed to me, where I'm standing there feeling broken and I hear this whisper in my head. And, it's our God Almighty who speaks to us in those moments when we're broken, when we're feeling that brokenness. And he said to me, he said, "You're not broken. You were never broken. That system is broken." And that revealed so much to me. And so I started on a journey of learning. And I basically at that point didn't think I was going to have more children. However, I didn't want any other women to go through what I went through, to experience that, to be forced into something they didn't want. Because that's basically how I felt. I was backed into a corner. And I ended up scheduling a C-section that I didn't want and didn't feel was necessary, because my daughter was breech. And to me, that is exactly what the doctor wanted, was for me to just schedule a C-section. She started talking about C-section at 4.5 months. And then at 9 months, she's breech. And, oh, well, you know what? The way she chose to explain an aversion was that it was painful and that it was dangerous. Like, she painted that picture for me to avoid it, for me to just give in. And I did. I gave in, but I gave in for the wrong reasons. I gave in because I wanted her out of my life. And I don't think anybody should ever have to make a medical decision based on whether they want their doctor in or out of their life. But that was what made my decision, was I didn't want that doctor in my life any longer. And I thought, well, I can schedule this and get it done, and then I don't have to deal with her. But that left me feeling broken. And that was a place I didn't like to be. So I didn't want anybody else to be there. And I started on my journey of learning, and that's how I got to where I'm at today. I am a pregnancy and childbirth mentor or coach, where I help women find the knowledge that they need to answer their concerns, so that they can have empowered births of their own, so that they can walk into their appointments, whether you choose to have an OB or a midwife. They can walk into their appointments and know that they can say yes or no to anything, that they get to make those decisions, and that they know ahead of time what tests or what procedures or what is going to be required of them. I help them lay that out so that they're not like me, walking through their first pregnancy. I knew nothing. I didn't seek answers. I didn't know what was required. I didn't know I could say no. And I abdicated my care to my care provider. She made all the decisions. I made none. And I gave over my power in that. And I will never do that again. So going forward, I ended up having 3 more children, all organically conceived. And I birthed them at home at 40, 41, and 43. So that's my story. That's who I am. And that's my passion, is to speak into women, because I believe that all women can have such amazing birth experiences that they want to shout it from the mountaintops, that they want to share their experience, but not from a, oh my gosh, it was so horrible, I never want to do that again standpoint, but from a, oh my gosh, it was amazing, I want to do it again. Right. That's what I want to hear women talking about.
So let's chat for a little bit about the generational lies and myths that are passed down, that are still passed down.
Yes. So I have been amazed at what I've heard come out of women's mouths when I start talking about childbirth. It's very easy to see how I don't even know what the word I want to say, how debilitating the stories we've heard are.
Yeah.
And one example of that is that I have a friend who has a friend who's pregnant, and she's had 2 C-sections. And so she reached out to me and was like, hey, my friend's pregnant. She wants to have a VBAC, but she's scared. And in talking to her, let's just say the conversations didn't last long, because one of her responses to me was like, well, my mom always had to have C-sections, so it's kind of just a thing for us. Whoa.
Ooh. Right.
Whoa. Like, I was like, wait, what? No. Because even if my mother had to have a C-section with me, that does not have any power over what my experience will be unless I give it that power.
Right.
Right? I can learn and I can believe in my own body. But just because your mother had to have C-sections does not mean that that is your lot in pregnancy and childbirth either.
Right.
And so just the same as knowing what your mother's experiences were, you need to understand what led to those.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand, more than likely, the lies that were told to get her into those C-sections.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because honesty, I mean, you're looking at how many, a third of women are going straight for C-sections now. A third of women. And then there's another third of women who end up in C-section because their care provider wants to intervene and pushes these interventions
Mm-hmm.
that then escalate and cascade and cause problems that then eventually lead to a C-section. So you have 2/3 of women ending up in a situation where they're looking at a C-section.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna say probably I'm gonna say a number, and this is just my personal opinion. 99% of them are probably unwarranted.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, there is a time and a place for needing a C-section, but again, it's a time and a place. It's not every situation.
Right.
So understanding that, yes, your mother had all C-sections, but understanding who her care provider was, what they were told. Because first of all, if her first was a C-section due to breech, like myself, okay, so breech is just another form of normal that has been, now hospitals say they don't deliver breech, and that's because they don't want to train on it, because there are more, I'm going to say, difficulties that can happen. There's a lot more they can't see happening on the birth, but they can learn just the same as I can sign up and take a class so I can learn and help women have breech at home. Like I can be a pair of eyes, a pair of hands that has experience because I chose to go and learn that thing.
Right.
Doctors have that ability. They don't want to do it. Their insurance, a lot of hospitals, it's because of their insurance. It has nothing to do with the fact that it can't be done. It's that they don't want to take the responsibility, and they don't know how to keep their hands off
Right.
and let things happen, which can cause a lot of big, scary risks, especially in breech, if they don't have the knowledge.
Right.
So if that was the reason for your, just backtrack, if that was the reason for your mom's first miscarriage, or first C-section, sorry, first C-section, chances are the reason for the rest of them was once a C-section, always a C-section. Not that there was a reason for her C-section, but because she was told that once she had one, she couldn't do it any other way, which I am proof that that is a lie.
Right.
Because I've had 3 babies after having a C-section. And so, again, knowing your history, knowing the history behind the birth is so important. But don't own something that happened to your mother. Don't own that. If you have fear surrounding birth or pregnancy and childbirth, heck, if your mother had horrible, what do you call it, morning sickness and difficulties throughout her pregnancy, you don't have to own that either.
Right.
Like, you have tools, and this is the information age.
Mm-hmm.
You can get knowledge that can help you in all of these ways. So so I just handled 2 of them, right? So your mother's experience is going to be your experience. No, do not own
No.
that. It's just like saying, well, my mom cut her finger off when she was cutting the tomato, so I'm going to cut my finger off when I cut tomatoes, so I don't cut tomatoes. Like, who would ever
Right.
say that?
Right.
Like,
Right.
that's an absurd statement to make. So don't own that stuff because it doesn't belong to you. That belongs to her. That she needs to process and heal from that and get closure on it. But you have to address the fears that you hold on to. And if your fears are surrounding that, then address, how can I avoid having a C-section? Well, one of those things is understanding pregnancy and childbirth in its most natural form.
Mm-hmm.
Gain that
Yep.
knowledge. And there's things you can do to control different aspects of your pregnancy that will help get to that point too. The other one was once a C-section, always the C-section. Sorry, that is a straight up lie to make it easier for them to convince you to have the next C-section. Essentially,
Right.
that is all it is.
Right.
It is a lie for them to just be able to say, okay, well, when we schedule it, like they will literally ask you at like your 3-month appointment. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get your C-section scheduled.
Yeah. No.
I got 6 months left. Why? It's easier for them to convince you
Mm-hmm.
when they tell you once is always.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's 2 of the biggest ones I hear. But
Mm-hmm.
or my mom's cervix wouldn't open, so mine won't either. First of all, I'd like to know who told your mom her cervix wouldn't open.
Right.
And I'd like to know the story behind that. Again, find
Yeah.
the answers to what led up to that, because
Right.
those answers will tell you a whole heck of a lot about the rest of the story, because all you're hearing is one part of it.
Exactly.
And what you're hearing is the part that was used to control your mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lie. And even if it's you who was told that in your first time pregnancy, your first time going into labor and having a child, even if that was you, no, go back and look at your experience.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Go back and unpack that and ask yourself, wait, what was I told leading up to that point? What was done leading up to that point?
Mm-hmm.
And see, because I would say 9 times out of 10, that statement comes from a failed induction.
Right. Right. Instead of calling it a triumphant
you
uterus.
didn't fail to right. You didn't fail to progress. Your body failed to be induced because it wasn't ready.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
there's also, most women don't even know they can check their own cervix. And so we're depending on somebody else to stick their hand up in there and check the cervix, not understanding 2 things. If the people checking, if you have 2 different people checking your cervix and they have different size hands, they're going to come back with conflicting numbers. That's one. And the other one is they can really go up in there and just tell you whatever they want to tell you. Even if it's a 6.
Exactly.
They can still tell you, oh, nope, you're not open.
Right.
And we don't want to think that people would do that. But I'm sorry, one of the ways I refer to myself as a birth insider, because I'm in the belly of the beast. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, not just from hospitals and obstetricians, but also from home birth midwives. And there's a lot of garbage going on. I've heard women being told, being dropped by a midwife because they're pre-diabetic. I don't even know what that is. Or they're pre-eclamptic. What in the world are these things going on here? So I like to tell women, you want the best possible chance of having the birth that you are envisioning. Learn about prenatal nutrition. Don't let anybody tell you it's not important. Even if you've got a midwife who isn't telling you anything about it, isn't checking your prenatal nutrition, a lot of them are setting you up to have you pay them in full, and then they're going to drop you once you start swelling, so you go have a birth with an obstetrician in a hospital. It is wrong, it is ugly, and it is, I wish that I could say it's unintentional, but sadly there are midwives that is their pattern.
Yes. Actually, we were in another group that I'm in of birth keepers. This has been a conversation many times because they are literally having women reach out to them as they're in labor because they've been dropped by their midwife in that, like, in the week leading up to that or whatever, for whatever reason. And there's no refund, and it's ridiculous.
Yep.
And it's hurtful to the people like you and myself who want women to be able to be empowered and have those births, right? We are wanting, like, we're on the other side of that. Like, we are the people who would stand in that gap and say, I'll be there. Like, I don't care that you can't pay me because you paid that person so much. Like, I don't care. I don't want you to feel like you're alone and that you've been abandoned because you haven't. I'm here. Right? Like, I would step into that gap. But it's sad because they're using just any little thing. And part of it, and not only that, but they're overbooking themselves. And then in the end, looking for those minuscule little things that they can say, oh, well, I can't attend. You've risked out with me. Now you're on your own. And it's sad because they're lining their pockets. I mean, let's call a spade what a spade, and they're being politicians, lining their pockets and leaving people in the dark. And it's sad. It's a sad space to be, and it's a sad thing to witness in our friends and in our communities where we're seeing this happen. It's very sad and hurtful. So yeah, it's very important to know who your team is. Like, do your background checks on these people, ask around, interview several people.
Yes.
Do gut checks. Do gut checks.
Do gut checks. Yes. A great question to ask.
Guy. Yeah. Ask God to guide you in that.
Exactly. And a great question to ask a midwife is how many women do you have with my same due month? And if she's got more than 4, and I'll tell you, 4 is the maximum. 4, you get worn out with 4 that have the same due month. But if it's more than that, end of conversation, stand up, walk out, thank her for her time, and just tell her this isn't going to work. Yeah. You have the right to say that, even if you feel like she's the last midwife for you to talk to. There isn't anybody else. Your other options are either a family birth, which you might not feel comfortable with, or a hospital. It is better to get up and walk out, because if she's taking on more than 4 with the same due month, then she's basically doing eeny, meeny, miny, mo on who is going to be the person to not get their home birth. Right. And I hate saying that. I absolutely hate saying that. But women and their lovers need to be aware that these are the things that are happening. We no longer live in a time where women can just hire a midwife and have an amazing birth. So do your due diligence. And if you're not sure, contact Amanda, contact myself, and we will help get somebody found in your area, because it's not that midwives like myself don't exist everywhere. We do. We are just hard to find because we don't necessarily mix well with the other midwives. And it's not that we're intentionally hiding. It's just that we take fewer clients because we pour ourselves into those clients. And so you may have to do some searching among us before you find someone who has room on their calendar for you. But you will find someone, because none of us are full.
And don't think that you won't find anybody because there's nobody in your area, because there are midwives and women like myself and Angie here who travel, who literally live in RVs so that they can travel and be that person for those people. And their prices aren't necessarily that much more or even more. I don't know exactly, but I know that there are women out there that I would personally refer others to, and they live in an RV so that they can travel and be missionaries in this purpose, in this line of work. Like this is what they want. This is where they're serving, and their husbands are the ones who are helping with the kids so that they can do this work. That is where their heart's in the right place. They are like picking up and moving from place to be in service. So your area may be like a shot in the dark of finding somebody, but when you reach out to people who are connected, you will find people. So get into groups, ask people that who have had home births, like recommend somebody, and it doesn't have to be somebody locally. Ask them wherever they're at, because chances are they've got a laundry list of other people that they know who are either midwives or have had home births, and they may know somebody in your area. So there's lots of opportunity to find the right people for you. I think we got way off course with this one, because I don't know where we went. I was like, I don't think this was the conversation, but hey, great conversation. It was a great side route.
Right. Well, and there are also birth keepers and midwives that are starting to even dabble with virtual support, because they can't get away from their home, and they know that you don't have anybody who will help you. But if you are open to having somebody on FaceTime or something, or even just on the phone supporting you when you feel like you need the support, then no woman should ever feel like there's no support for her.
Right. And I am that woman. I have said it to many people. And I have to tell you that I have a group on Facebook, and there is one particular person who can vouch for this. If I see one of my friends that I don't talk to on a regular basis, but I know she's pregnant, if she's calling me through Facebook, I'm answering. Like in the middle of conversations, I will get up and walk away when I see that person calling, because I'm like, this person's pregnant. They only call me if they need something that has to do with my passion, which is pregnancy and childbirth. So I answer those calls like no matter what. So if you're somebody who in the moment needs support, look me up on Facebook and call me. And if you shoot me a message like pregnant, in labor, or need to talk pregnancy, I will answer that call. I will answer that call. So just so you know, amazing. I am that person.
So Amanda, what do you have to offer? What is something that you're offering right now to benefit pregnant mamas and their lovers, and in this process of creating and bringing tiny humans into the world?
So I have a workshop that I am just so happy to have put together for people, because it is a healing process of so we talked about healing through different aspects, right? And healing through your traumatic birth experience is something that is so necessary if you are wanting to have a different experience going forward, even if that experience includes having your baby at the hospital and you still want an epidural, but you don't want all the other stuff, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's completely up to you. But again, if that's what you want, you're still going to have to work for it. You still
Mm-hmm.
have to gain the backbone that I am responsible for my care. I
Mm-hmm.
choose for me, and no, you don't get to railroad me into what you want. You have to
Mm-hmm.
have that posture, that backbone, and to stand behind that. But part of that is healing from your previous birth experiences, because they've stripped you of your power in that space. So when you go
Mm-hmm.
back to that space, you kind of end up going back to that place of, I'm powerless here
Right.
unless you heal and leave that stuff in the past. So what I have is I created a workshop. It's called the Birth Story Healing and Redemptive Birth Vision Workshop. And what I do with that in that workshop is I walk you through a process of unraveling your previous birth experiences, your traumas. I reveal the truths that are behind what happened in your experience, because in most cases you can pinpoint and point them out. Like it's so sad to say this, but it's most of the instances that you have experienced in your traumatic birth experience are so common now
Mm-hmm.
that us that are educated in childbirth and pregnancy, we can literally like take your record and look at it and be like, well, here is where it happened.
Mm-hmm.
This
Right.
right here started this, and this. And that is where all that trauma came from. So what we do is we unpack that. And then I give you tools and a process of releasing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talk about creating your redemptive birth vision. And I help you to let go of the vision of what was
Mm-hmm.
and cast the vision of what you want your future birth experiences to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love this workshop because it literally, I've got goosebumps because I can see so many women being healed from their
Mm-hmm.
and families. It's not just the woman. I mean, the woman is the one who suffered the trauma, but I guarantee you that if you had trauma, your husband experienced trauma as well.
Yes.
Because a man's first instinct is to protect his wife and his family. And in those moments, they literally feel powerless.
Right.
And that trauma can run very deep with them. And if you know men, they don't like to talk about these things.
Right.
But your healing can bring about his healing, because you can help then you can create a safe space for him to talk about what his experience was. And then you can help him by assuring him that you are okay. Right? Because if you
Right.
heal, then you can release him of any guilt he holds in that space.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that I can bring that healing to families and give them like a vision to shoot for. And what happens when you have that vision is you're more likely to seek out the knowledge to make that vision come true.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that
Love
is
it.
what I have available.
So how do people find that? How do they get involved with that workshop?
You can find that workshop on my website. It is amandaignot.com. And it's just a little button at the top line of my website. You can find that, and it just says workshop. And when you click on it, it'll take you to a page that kind of talks about all the things that go on in there. And if you use intro 50, you get $50 off the cost of that.
Nice.
So yeah, and you can also find me if you're just looking for a community of women where you can ask questions and kind of gain some knowledge with quick tips and stuff, you can find me on Facebook at Open-Minded and Empowered Birthing Mamas, where I've created that space.
Nice. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being here. I have really enjoyed our conversation, and this is going to be, as all of my episodes are, life-changing for the women who listen. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
I have been honored and blessed to be here with you, Angie. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. To learn more about Land Bountiful Ministry, visit our website, landbountifulministry.org. To learn more about this week's guest, simply visit the description for this episode. And if you'd like to be a guest on this show, send an email to Angie at landbountifulministry.org.